The chandelier light caught the diamond on Vanessa Reed's finger as she raised her champagne flute. From across the ballroom of the estate, I watched my sister's smile. That same smile I'd known since childhood, now directed at the man who, until 6 months ago, had been my husband. To new beginnings, Vanessa's voice carried through the room, and to the man who makes them possible. Marcus stood beside her, his hand resting on the small of her back, a gesture he once reserved for me. His eyes, however, never quite met hers when she looked at him. They scanned the room instead, landing briefly on me before darting away. The guests, most of whom had attended our wedding 5 years earlier, raised their glasses with uncomfortable smiles. I remained still, my own glass untouched. And to family, Vanessa added, looking directly at me, without whom none of this would be possible. The crystal flute in my hand shattered. I hadn't realized how tightly I was gripping it. Blood dripped onto the marble floor as whispers erupted around me. I smiled through the pain. "Congratulations," I said, my voice steady despite the trembling in my chest. "You've always wanted what was mine, Vanessa. I hope it's everything you imagined." I turned and walked out, leaving behind gasps and murmurs. What they didn't know, what neither Marcus nor Vanessa knew, was that I had come prepared. Tonight wasn't an ending. It was merely the beginning of what I had planned for months. 18 months earlier. "Olivia, you can't keep putting this off," Marcus said, his voice soft but insistent as he sat at the edge of our bed. "Your sister has been living in our guest house for 3 months now. It was supposed to be temporary," I sighed, setting down the financial report I'd been reviewing. "She's family, Marcus, and she's going through a rough time. I understand that, but—" He ran a hand through his dark hair, a gesture I'd come to recognize as frustration mixed with restraint. "There's something about the way she looks at me sometimes. It makes me uncomfortable?" I laughed, though the sound came out hollow. "That's ridiculous. Vanessa's always been a flirt, but she's my sister." Marcus's technology company, Reed Innovations, had gone public the previous year, catapulting us from comfortable to stratospheric wealth. The $700 million fortune had changed many things, but I hadn't expected it to change how I saw the people closest to me, especially not Vanessa. Growing up, Vanessa had always been the pretty one, the charming one, while I was the smart one, the responsible one. When our parents died in a car accident 10 years ago, I was the one who managed the funeral arrangements, sorted through their modest estate, and made sure Vanessa finished college. She'd bounced from job to job, relationship to relationship, always landing on her feet until her messy divorce from a hedge fund manager left her nearly penniless. "Just a few weeks," she'd pleaded when she showed up at our door with 2 suitcases and tear-streaked makeup. "I just need to get back on my feet." Marcus had been generous, setting her up in our guest house, offering to help her find work through his connections. I was grateful for his kindness. It was one of the many reasons I'd fallen in love with him 15 years ago when we met as struggling college students with big dreams. "I just think we need to set some boundaries," Marcus continued, pulling me back to the present. "Yesterday, I found her going through your desk in the study." I frowned. "What, are you sure?" She said she was looking for stamps. His expression was serious. "Olivia, I know you want to see the best in people, especially family, but sometimes—" "I'll talk to her," I promised, though a knot formed in my stomach. It wasn't the first time Vanessa had crossed boundaries. Even as children, she'd taken my toys, worn my clothes without asking, and once in high school she'd kissed my boyfriend at a party, claiming she thought he was someone else. But we were adults now. Surely she wouldn't. The next morning, I drove to the office early. As co-founder and COO of Reed Innovations, I had mountains of work, especially with our new medical technology division launching. I'd built the company alongside Marcus from nothing, coding at night while working day jobs, pooling our savings to file patents. The success had never been just his. Despite what the business magazines often implied with their profiles focusing on the brilliant male founder, I was deep into a meeting with our legal team when my phone buzzed with a text from Elena. "My assistant, your sister is here. Says it's important." I excused myself, finding Vanessa waiting in my office, looking immaculate in a dress I recognized from my own closet. "Is that my Prada?" I asked, more amused than annoyed. Vanessa twirled. "You never wear it." It was crying out to be shown off. She plopped into my chair. "This view is amazing. How do you get any work done?" "By not staring out the window," I said, leaning against my desk. "What's so important, Van?" She smiled, that dazzling smile that had charmed everyone since she was a toddler. "I've decided what I want to do. I'm going to start an interior design business, and I need startup capital." I blinked. "Interior design? You've never mentioned any interest in that." "I've always had an eye for beautiful things," she said, waving a dismissive hand. "Remember how I rearranged Mom and Dad's living room when I was 16? Everyone said it looked like a magazine spread. That was 15 years ago, Vanessa. So, I've been researching. There's huge money in luxury design for the tech elite. I figured you and Marcus could invest, maybe introduce me to some of your wealthy friends." Her eyes gleamed with excitement. "I just need about $2 million to get started." The figure made me cough. $2 million? Are you serious? "It's nothing to you now," she said, her voice suddenly hard. "You have $700 million. That's not liquid cash, Vanessa. Most of it is company stock that we can't just sell whenever we want." I softened my tone. "Look, if you're serious about this, let's create a proper business plan. I'll help you figure out realistic startup costs." Her face fell into a practiced pout. "You never support my dreams, Liv. You always think you know better because you're older." "That's not fair. I've supported you financially for years. And now you're successful, so successful you don't even need all that money. Would it kill you to share a tiny fraction with your only sister?" Her voice rose slightly. "Or do you want me dependent on your charity forever?" "Of course not, but Marcus said he'd help me." The words hung in the air between us. I felt a chill. "You discussed this with Marcus before coming to me?" "We happened to talk about it over breakfast this morning. He thought it was a great idea." She smiled again, but it didn't reach her eyes. "He said he'd consider being my first investor if you agreed." I suddenly remembered Marcus's concerns from the night before. The way Vanessa looked at him, the boundaries being crossed. "I need to get back to my meeting," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "We'll talk about this at home." That evening, I confronted Marcus, who seemed genuinely confused. "I never said I'd invest," he insisted. "She mentioned something about interior design, and I said it sounded interesting, that's all. You know how Vanessa twists things? I did know. It was a pattern. Create conflict, then act innocent when confronted." Over the next weeks, I noticed small changes. Marcus working later. Vanessa making elaborate dinners that would be ready just as he arrived home. The way she'd touch his arm when laughing at his jokes. How often I'd walk into rooms to find them in private conversation that would halt abruptly. Am I being paranoid? I asked my closest friend, Rachel, over lunch. Rachel, who had known both me and Vanessa since college, sighed. "Honestly? No. I saw how she was looking at him at your birthday party last month. It wasn't subtle." "She's my sister," I said, the words sounding hollow even to my own ears. "And she's always wanted what you have." Rachel reached for my hand. "Remember when you made valedictorian? How she told everyone she had higher grades but turned down the honor? Or when you got that scholarship to Stanford, and she suddenly decided she wanted to go there too, even though she'd never mentioned it before?" I remembered. I also remembered making excuses for her, attributing her behavior to insecurity, to our parents' tendency to compare us. "Marcus would never," I started, then stopped. Would he? We'd been together 15 years, married for 5. Our relationship had weathered the storms of startup life, the 80-hour work weeks, the stress of nearly going bankrupt twice before our breakthrough. But lately, things had been strained. The wealth had changed our lives in ways we hadn't anticipated. The pressure, the public scrutiny, the sudden influx of friends we barely knew. And Vanessa was beautiful, charming, uncomplicated. She didn't carry the weight of the company on her shoulders. She could laugh and flirt and be present in a way I struggled to be lately. "Talk to them," Rachel urged. Clear the air before this goes any further. I intended to. But that night, there was a crisis with our European distributor. The next day, a problem with the FDA approval process for our newest device. The conversation I needed to have kept getting pushed aside for urgent matters that couldn't wait. Until the day I came home early with a migraine to find Vanessa's car in the driveway at 2 p.m. Unusual since she typically spent her days shopping or at spa appointments. The house was quiet as I entered, dropping my keys in the bowl by the door. Then I heard it. A laugh, Vanessa's laugh, coming from upstairs. My feet moved of their own accord, taking me up the staircase silently. Our bedroom door was ajar. Through the crack, I could see Vanessa sitting on my bed, wearing only a silk robe, my silk robe. Marcus stood by the window, his back to me, saying something I couldn't hear. She'll never know, Vanessa said, her voice carrying clearly. She's too busy with the company to notice what's happening right under her nose. I pushed the door open, heart pounding so hard I thought it might break through my chest. They both turned, startled. Marcus was fully clothed, I noted with a detached part of my brain. He looked horrified. Olivia! This isn't, he began. What it looks like? I finished for him. Then what is it exactly? Vanessa stood, tightening the robe around her. Oh, don't be dramatic, Liv. Nothing happened. Yet, I said, my voice strangely calm. Nothing happened yet. Olivia, please. Marcus stepped toward me, his face pale. Your sister came to my office at the house, said she needed advice on something. I had no idea. Stopped. I held up a hand. Just stop. I turned and walked out, ignoring their calls. I got in my car and drove with no destination in mind. Hours later, I found myself at Rachel's apartment where I finally let the tears come. I want to believe him, I sobbed. But I can't unsee it. The way she looked at him. The way she's been positioning herself since she moved in. Rachel held me, murmuring comforting words. What are you going to do? I took a deep, shuddering breath. I don't know yet. But I know one thing. I'm not going to let either of them make a fool of me. The weeks that followed were a blur of legal meetings, separate bedrooms, and tense silences. Marcus swore nothing physical had happened, that Vanessa had been pursuing him, not the other way around. I wanted to believe him, but trust, once fractured, is not easily repaired. What I didn't tell Marcus was that I'd hired a private investigator to follow both him and Vanessa. Every evening, I would review the reports and photographs, searching for evidence of betrayal while hoping to find none. 3 weeks after the incident, the PI delivered what I had been dreading, photos of Marcus and Vanessa at a secluded restaurant 2 towns over, holding hands across the table, leaning in close for intimate conversation. In one image, he wiped a tear from her cheek with a tenderness that made my stomach turn. That night, I confronted Marcus with the photos. It's not what it seems, he insisted. She was upset, said she felt guilty about causing problems between us. I was trying to be kind, to tell her she needed to move out. And did she? I asked, my voice sharp. Is she packing as we speak? His silence was answer enough. I want a divorce, I said quietly. The shock on his face seemed genuine. Olivia, no. We can work through this. 15 years. 15 years I invested in you, in us, in building our company together. My voice remained steady even as pain threatened to overwhelm me. And you threw it away for my sister. I love you, he said, reaching for my hands. Only you. Always you, I pulled away. If that were true, we wouldn't be having this conversation. The divorce proceedings began the following week. I moved into a hotel suite while my attorney, Diana Chen, the shrewdest divorce lawyer in Silicon Valley, prepared for war. The prenup is solid, Diana assured me, but there are always angles. You are co-founders. You can claim your intellectual contribution to the company's success. I nodded, only half listening as she outlined strategies. My mind was elsewhere, fixated on the betrayal, not just from a husband, but from my only remaining family. What I didn't anticipate was Vanessa's next move. 2 months into the divorce, with negotiations ongoing, I received a call from Diana. You need to come to my office. Now. When I arrived, she handed me a tabloid magazine. On the cover was a photo of Marcus and Vanessa emerging from a courthouse, her hand sporting a massive diamond engagement ring. The headline read, "Tech billionaire trades in wife for her younger sister." "They got married," Diana said flatly. "Yesterday. Small civil ceremony, just the two of them." The room seemed to tilt. "That's not possible. The divorce isn't final." He filed for an annulment last week, claiming the marriage was never consummated. Diana's expression was grim. "Which we both know is absurd, but it's a tactic to expedite the process. And Vanessa is now legally Mrs. Reed." Diana hesitated. "There's more. She's claiming she contributed to the company's founding concept. Says she gave you both the idea during a conversation years ago." I laughed, the sound bordering on hysterical. "That's insane. She can barely operate her iPhone, let alone understand what our technology does. It doesn't matter if it's true. It creates complications, potentially delays the divorce settlement." Diana looked at me carefully. "And there's a risk. If he transfers company assets to her now, as his new wife, he could shield them from me in the divorce," I finished, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. That night, alone in my hotel suite, I stared at the magazine cover until Vanessa's triumphant smile blurred before my eyes. This had been her plan all along, I realized. Not just to steal my husband, but to take everything I had built. The betrayal cut deeper than I thought possible. It wasn't just about Marcus anymore. It was about my life's work, my legacy, being stolen from under me by my own blood. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I rarely used. "Ethan, it's Olivia Reed. I need your help." Ethan Blackwood had been our company's first investor, a venture capitalist with a reputation for ruthlessness that was matched only by his loyalty to those he respected. He had always treated me as Marcus's equal, even when others hadn't. "I thought you might call," he said when we met for coffee the next morning. "I've seen the headlines." "Then you know I'm in a fight for everything I've built." I looked him directly in the eyes. "And I need allies." Ethan nodded slowly. "What exactly are you asking for, Olivia?" "Information, leverage." I took a deep breath. "And possibly a way to regain control of what's rightfully mine." What followed was a deep dive into the company's finances, governance structures, and Marcus's recent decisions as CEO. With Ethan's help, I discovered that Marcus had been making questionable moves since our separation, appointing friends to the board, exploring selling off our most promising medical technology division, and, most troublingly, backdating stock transfers to Vanessa. "This is fraud," Ethan said, showing me the documents his sources had obtained. "Clear as day. Can we prove it?" "With the right forensic accountants, yes." He studied me carefully. "But Olivia, this is scorched earth. Once you go down this road, they already burned everything to the ground," I said, my resolve hardening. "I'm just making sure they don't profit from the ashes." Armed with evidence of financial impropriety, I called an emergency board meeting. As co-founder, I still had that right, even though I'd stepped back from daily operations during the divorce proceedings. The boardroom fell silent as I entered. Marcus sat at the head of the table, looking haggard but defiant. Beside him, shockingly, sat Vanessa, dressed in an approximation of my usual business attire. "This is a closed meeting," Marcus began. "Vanessa is here as my wife and advisor, but how convenient," I interrupted, setting my briefcase on the table. "Because what I'm about to present concerns both of you directly." For the next 30 minutes, I methodically outlined the evidence of financial misconduct, stock manipulation, and breach of fiduciary duty. With each slide, Marcus's face grew paler, while Vanessa's confident smile faded to confusion, then alarm. "These are serious allegations," said board member James Wilson, looking uncomfortable. "If true—" "They're not," Marcus cut in. "This is a vindictive attack by a woman scorned." "Nothing more," I smiled thinly. "The SEC and Department of Justice will determine that. I've already forwarded all documentation to them, as well as to the business press." Vanessa stood suddenly, her chair scraping back. "You can't do this! You'll destroy everything!" You mean like you destroyed my marriage? My family? I kept my voice level. I'm simply protecting what I helped build. The board meeting dissolved into chaos after that. By evening, news of the allegations had leaked to the press. The company's stock plummeted in after-hours trading. My phone buzzed constantly with calls from journalists, investors, and former colleagues. I ignored them all, sitting alone in my hotel room, watching the financial news coverage with a strange detachment. This wasn't the justice I had wanted. It felt hollow, pyrrhic. In exposing Marcus, I had potentially damaged the company I loved, the legacy I had spent 15 years building. Then came a knock at my door. When I opened it, Diana stood there with another woman I recognized as Vanessa's divorce attorney from her previous marriage. "We need to talk," Diana said. "They're offering a deal." The private dining room at the Four Seasons was silent, except for the occasional clink of ice and water glasses. Marcus sat opposite me, flanked by his attorneys. Vanessa was notably absent. "Where's my sister?" I asked, breaking the tense silence. Marcus's jaw tightened. "She thought it best if we spoke alone." "Convenient." I turned to Diana. "Let's hear this deal they're so desperate to make." Marcus's lead attorney, a silver-haired man named Garrison, cleared his throat. "Our proposal is straightforward. Mr. Reed will agree to a division of marital assets that grants you 40% of the company shares and a cash settlement of $150 million. I laughed. "That's your idea of generous?" "I co-founded the company. I wrote half the original code. I managed operations while Marcus was the public face. In exchange," Garrison continued as if I hadn't spoken, "you will withdraw your allegations from the SEC and agree to a mutual non-disparagement clause." "And what about Vanessa? What does my dear sister get in this arrangement?" Marcus finally met my eyes. "That's not your concern." Something in his tone made me pause. There was resignation there, perhaps even regret. Diana leaned close to whisper in my ear. "This isn't their initial offer. They started at 25% and $80 million. They're scared, Olivia." I nodded slightly, then addressed Marcus directly. "I want to speak with you. Alone." The attorneys began to protest, but Marcus raised a hand to silence them. 5 minutes. When we were alone in the room, the facade between us finally dropped. Marcus looked exhausted. The confident CEO replaced by a man who had aged years and months. "Why her?" I asked, the question that had haunted me for months finally escaping. "Of all people, why my sister?" He didn't answer immediately, staring into his water glass as if it held some profound truth. "I didn't plan it," he finally said. "She was there, attentive. You and I were barely speaking. The company was consuming you. So this is my fault?" My voice rose despite my effort to remain calm. "I was working 18-hour days to keep our company afloat while you were, what? Feeling neglected?" "No." He shook his head. "I'm not blaming you. I made a terrible mistake. The worst of my life. Yet you married her." A bitter laugh escaped him. "That was another mistake. What I'm paying for now." Something in his tone caught my attention. "What do you mean?" Marcus glanced at the door, ensuring we were still alone. "Vanessa isn't who you think she is. Or maybe she's exactly who you always suspected." He ran a hand through his hair, that familiar gesture of frustration. "The day after we got married, she started talking about her vision for the company. How she wanted a position on the board, how we should sell off the medical division because it was too complicated for her to understand." Despite everything, I felt a spark of vindication. "And you're surprised?" "I was blind," he admitted. "Or wanted to be. Then I discovered she'd been transferring money from our accounts to offshore banks. When I confronted her, she reminded me that as my wife, she was entitled to half of everything." "So you committed fraud to protect your assets from her, just like you tried to hide them from me in the divorce." The irony was almost too perfect. "I panicked," he said simply. "And now everything I've built is at risk." "Everything we built," he corrected. I studied him, this man I had once loved beyond reason. "You want my help. I want to make things right. As right as they can be. By offering me less than half of what's already mine?" He leaned forward. The company won't survive this scandal, Olivia. You know that. If the SEC investigation proceeds, if these allegations go public in detail, Reed Innovations is finished. Thousands of employees lose their jobs. The technology we created to help people never reaches them. Don't pretend this is about the greater good, I said sharply. This is about saving yourself. Maybe it's about saving something worth saving, he countered. Even if I don't deserve to be saved. I stood, needing to put physical distance between us. Where is Vanessa now? Really? Marcus hesitated. Packing. I've filed for an annulment. Again. This time with evidence of fraud on her part. I laughed, genuinely amused for the first time in months. She lasted what? 8 weeks as Mrs. Reed? That must be a record, even for Vanessa. She's threatening to go to the press with insider information if I don't give her a settlement. His voice was weary. Information about company practices that could be misinterpreted. So that's why you need my SEC complaint to disappear. You're fighting on 2 fronts. Yes. I walked to the window, looking out at the city below. The company we had built from nothing had changed this skyline, had changed medicine, had changed lives. Was I willing to destroy all of that for revenge? I need to speak with her, I said finally. Olivia, I don't think... Those are my terms, Marcus. I speak with Vanessa alone or there's no deal. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded. I'll arrange it. The next day, I sat in the living room of what had once been my home, waiting. When Vanessa finally entered, she looked nothing like the triumphant woman from the tabloid cover. Her makeup was impeccable, but couldn't quite hide the strain around her eyes. Come to gloat? She asked, remaining standing while I sat in what had once been my favorite chair. Why would I gloat? You're being discarded, just like I was. There's no victory in that for either of us. She crossed her arms. What do you want, Olivia? I'm busy, packing, I hear. Moving on to your next target? A flash of something, hurt perhaps, or rage, crossed her face. You always think the worst of me. Always have. And you've always given me reason to. I gestured to the seat across from me. Sit down, Vanessa. Let's talk like adults for once. Reluctantly, she sat, perching on the edge of the sofa as if ready to flee at any moment. All our lives, I began, you've wanted what I had. My toys, my clothes, my achievements. Now my husband, my company. I leaned forward. What I can't understand is why. What did I ever do to make you hate me so much? Hate you? She laughed, a brittle sound. I don't hate you, Olivia. I've spent my life in your shadow. The smart one, the responsible one, the successful one. Do you have any idea what that's like? We all make our own choices, Vanessa. Easy for you to say. You were always Dad's favorite, always the one everyone believed in. Her voice trembled slightly. I was just the pretty one, the one who'd marry well because I couldn't possibly succeed on my own merits. I shook my head. That's not true. You had every opportunity I did. More even. I was the one working 3 jobs to put myself through college while you got to focus on your studies. I was the one who managed their estate, who made sure you finished school after they died, and never let me forget it. She snapped. Saint Olivia, always taking care of irresponsible Vanessa. Is that why you seduced my husband? To punish me for helping you? She looked away, her perfect composure cracking slightly. I didn't plan it. He was kind to me when I was at my lowest. He listened. He made me feel valued for something other than my appearance. And the money had nothing to do with it? I couldn't keep the skepticism from my voice. Of course it did, she admitted, surprising me with her honesty. But it wasn't just that. For once in my life, I wanted what you had. The security, the respect, the purpose. And Marcus? He made me believe I could have it. Until he saw the real you. Her eyes flashed. The real me? You mean the me who isn't willing to be a doormat? Who actually wants a say in the company her husband built? The company we built, I corrected. And you know nothing about it. You couldn't even explain what our technology does if your life depended on it. I could have learned. For a moment, the composed facade fell away completely, revealing the insecurity beneath. I'm not stupid, Olivia, no matter what you've always thought. I never thought you were stupid. Selfish, yes. Reckless, absolutely. But never stupid. I sighed, suddenly weary of this conversation that felt like so many we'd had before. What do you want, Vanessa? Really want? She seemed taken aback by the question. What do you mean? Marcus is cutting you loose. The company is in jeopardy. Your plan, whatever it was, has failed. So what now? What does Vanessa want out of life? She was silent for a long moment, and I saw something I rarely witnessed in my sister. Genuine reflection. I want to start over, she finally said. Somewhere new. Where I'm not just Olivia Reed's little sister or Marcus Reed's mistake of a wife. And you need money for that. I deserve something, she said defensively. I may have made mistakes, but he used me too. He knew what he was doing when he married me to try to keep assets from you. I couldn't argue with that. In his own way, Marcus had exploited her as much as she had him. What if I offered you a deal? I said slowly, an idea forming. Independent of whatever Marcus is proposing. Her eyes narrowed suspiciously. What kind of deal? $2 million. Enough to start over somewhere new. Buy a small business, perhaps, she laughed. The same amount I asked to borrow for my interior design business. The amount you said was too much. The difference is, this time I know exactly what I'm paying for. And what's that? Her voice was guarded. Your shares in the company, whatever Marcus has transferred to you. Your silence regarding company matters and... I paused, meeting her eyes directly. An end to this cycle between us. A clean break. No more contact. The last part seemed to hit her hardest. For all our conflicts, we were still sisters. Still the only family either of us had left. You'd pay me to disappear from your life? Her voice was small. I'd pay you to give us both a fresh start, I corrected. Without the poison of the past. She was quiet for a long time, considering. $3 million, she finally said. And I wanted in writing that you won't pursue criminal charges for anything that might have happened. Civil and criminal are different matters, Vanessa. You know what I mean. Your SEC complaint. I want it gone, I nodded slowly. Contingent upon Marcus agreeing to my terms in the divorce. Full, equal division of all company assets and intellectual property rights. He'll never agree to that. He'll fight you. Then I guess we all go down together. I stood, signaling the end of our conversation. Think about it, Vanessa. A clean start, or a protracted legal battle that leaves all of us damaged. Your choice. As I walked to the door, she called after me. Why are you doing this? After everything, why offer me anything at all? I paused, considering the question. Because unlike you and Marcus, I understand the difference between price and value. The price of peace? $3 million. The value of being free of this toxic dynamic? Priceless. The grand ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton glittered with the light of 1,000 candles. On the stage, Marcus Reed accepted the Humanitarian Innovation Award for Reed Medical Technology's breakthrough in affordable insulin delivery systems. This award belongs to our entire team, he said into the microphone, but especially to the visionary who made it all possible from the beginning. Dr. Olivia Chen. From my table near the front, I raised my glass in acknowledgement as applause filled the room. Beside me, my new husband, Dr. James Chen, squeezed my hand. You deserve this, he whispered. All of it. It had been 2 years since the confrontation that had changed everything. In the end, Marcus had agreed to my terms. Equal division of all assets. My return to the company as head of the medical division while he maintained leadership of the consumer technology side. And a complete separation of our personal and professional lives. The scandal had been contained. The SEC investigation quietly closed when I withdrew my complaint, satisfied that the new corporate governance structure would prevent future abuses. The business press had eventually moved on to newer, juicier stories. Vanessa had taken her $3 million and disappeared to the south of France. The last I heard, through mutual acquaintances, she had opened a small but successful boutique hotel on the coast, catering to wealthy tourists. She seemed happy, they said, at peace. We hadn't spoken since the day of our final conversation, honoring our agreement for a clean break. As for me, I had found an unexpected second chapter. Working alongside researchers at Stanford, where I had taken a part-time teaching position, I had met James, brilliant, kind, secure in himself in a way Marcus had never been. Our courtship had been mature, thoughtful, without the drama that I now recognized had characterized my relationship with Marcus from the beginning. After Marcus's speech, there was a brief intermission before dinner. I excused myself to the powder room, needing a moment alone to collect my thoughts. As I stood at the sink, the door opened, and in the mirror, I saw Marcus's reflection. "You're in the wrong room," I said, turning to face him. He looked different than he had 2 years ago, healthier but humbler too. "I wanted to talk to you privately. It's been a while. We talked last week at the board meeting. That was business." He stepped further into the room, letting the door close behind him. "I wanted to say, I'm sorry. Truly sorry. For everything." I studied him, searching for the manipulation behind the words and finding, to my surprise, what seemed like genuine remorse. "It worked out for the best," I said finally. "The company is stronger than ever. The medical division is doing work I'm proud of. And you're happy," he observed. "With James?" "Yes, I am." He nodded slowly. "I never thought I'd say this, but I'm glad." "You deserve that, Olivia. Thank you." I moved toward the door. "Is that all?" He hesitated. "Have you heard from her? From Vanessa?" The question surprised me. "No, that was part of our agreement." "I dream about her sometimes," he admitted, his voice low. "Not romantic dreams. Nightmares, really. About how easily I was manipulated. About how I threw away something real for something that was never more than an illusion. I felt a strange mixture of vindication and pity. We all made choices, Marcus. We all have to live with them. Some choices have longer consequences than others." He attempted a smile. "James is a good man. Better than I was. Different," I corrected. "Just different." As I reached for the door handle, he asked one final question. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if she never came to stay with us? If I had been stronger, or you had been less trusting?" I paused, considering. "No, I don't live in the world of what if anymore, Marcus. Only what is and what can be." "Wise as always," he murmured. "Not wise," I countered. "Just experienced? Goodbye, Marcus." I returned to the ballroom, to James, to the life I had rebuilt from the ashes of betrayal. As I took my seat, he leaned over to kiss my cheek. "Everything okay?" he asked. I looked around the room, at the company that now thrived under shared leadership, at the colleagues who had stood by me through the darkest days, at the man beside me who loved me not as an accessory to his success, but as an equal partner in life. "Yes," I said, meaning it completely. "Everything is exactly as it should be." Later that night, as James slept beside me in our hotel suite, I opened my laptop to check my email one last time. Among the usual business correspondence was a message from an unfamiliar address. The subject line read simply, "Thank you." I hesitated, then clicked it open. "Olivia, I heard about your award tonight. Congratulations. It's well-deserved. You gave me the chance to start over, and I have. The hotel is small, but it's mine. Built with my own ideas, my own work. For the first time in my life, I'm proud of something I've created, not something I've taken. I know we agreed not to contact each other, and this will be my only breach of that agreement. But I wanted you to know that you were right. The price of peace was $3 million. The value of finding myself, of breaking our toxic cycle, truly is priceless. I won't expect a reply. Just know that somewhere on the French coast, your sister is finally becoming the person she perhaps should have been all along." Six stared at the screen for a long time, a complex mixture of emotions washing over me. Then, quietly, I closed the laptop without replying and turned off the light. Some chapters were meant to stay closed, even if acknowledged. Some wounds healed best with distance, and some victories were measured not in dollars or revenge, but in the freedom to build a future unshackled from the past. As I drifted toward sleep, I realized that the true fortune I had fought for wasn't measured in millions, but in the peace I now carried within myself, a peace that no betrayal could ever again steal away.
And that wraps up today's story. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see how far these stories reach. If this story moved you or gave you chills, give it a like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. One last thing, rate the story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps us bring you even better ones next time. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you being part of this storytelling journey.